The rain arrived before dusk, washing the ancient stone walls of castle in silver, while servants hurried through the corridors carrying lanterns against the gathering darkness. Beyond the grand windows, rose gardens bent beneath the wind, yet inside the kitchen's warmth lingered in the scent of fresh bread, rosemary, and slow-cooked stew. The castle had stood proudly through generations of dukes, but lately its magnificent halls felt strangely hollow, as though laughter had long ago packed its belongings and disappeared. Duke, 36 years old, carried the dignity expected of England's nobility, yet loneliness shadowed every measured step he took. Since his father's death 6 years earlier, duty had replaced happiness. He attended Parliament, settled disputes among tenants, restored aging cottages, and ensured every servant received fair wages before spending a single sovereign upon himself. Still, every evening he returned to echoing corridors where silence greeted him more faithfully than any companion. Only one place within the castle ever felt alive to him. The kitchens belonged to. At 25, possessed neither noble blood nor expensive jewels. She wore simple dresses beneath a spotless apron, pinned her chestnut hair into a practical knot, and greeted everyone with quiet kindness instead of loud cheerfulness. Her greatest gift was not merely cooking remarkable meals, but making people believe they mattered while she prepared them. She remembered every servant's favorite soup, every stable boy's birthday, and every elderly gardener's aching joints. Somehow, even the busiest mornings seemed gentler whenever she smiled. Often invented reasons to visit the kitchens. Sometimes he claimed to inspect supplies. Sometimes he asked whether the village children had received enough bread from the previous day's baking. Occasionally, he simply lingered beside the long oak table, watching knead dough with graceful confidence while sunlight spilled through the windows. Their conversations remained modest, discussing herbs, harvests, books, or village festivals, yet each exchange lingered in his thoughts long after it ended. Admired the Duke from a careful distance. She saw a man hidden beneath titles and expectations. While society praised his authority, she noticed smaller things. He always removed his hat before greeting elderly servants. He personally carried firewood when storms trapped workers indoors. He thanked cooks after every meal, though no nobleman was expected to do so. Such gestures quietly revealed the generous heart concealed beneath formal manners. Neither dared confess deeper feelings. The difference between a duke and his cook seemed wider than the miles separating London from Scotland. Believed affection would only bring disappointment. Feared placing her in the cruel sights of aristocratic gossip. Therefore, they treasured ordinary moments instead of impossible dreams. Unfortunately, someone else noticed those moments. Lady Beatrice's elegant stepmother observed everything from behind polished smiles. Widowed only in name, she still commanded the household with practiced authority, enjoying influence that would disappear the instant married. To her, represented not kindness but danger. A servant who captured the Duke's heart threatened years of careful control. One afternoon, Lady Beatrice invited into the drawing room. "You have responsibilities beyond personal happiness," she reminded him while pouring tea. "Distinguished families already question why you remain unmarried. Imagine their outrage should whispers spread that your attention rests upon a kitchen servant." Frowned but remained silent. She continued with practiced calm. "Your father's legacy deserves protection. You must think like a duke, not a young gentleman." Those words settled heavily upon him. Loved his late father deeply and carried the burden of honoring his memory every day. Lady Beatrice understood precisely which wound to touch. The following morning she sought instead. Her smile appeared gracious, but every sentence carried hidden cruelty. "His Grace appreciates your cooking," she said softly. "Nothing more. A noble engagement will soon be announced, and it would spare everyone embarrassment if you remembered your proper place." His hands tightened around the basket she carried. Lady Beatrice leaned closer. "The Duke dislikes unpleasant scenes. When the time comes, leave with dignity." managed a respectful nod, though heartbreak quietly unfolded inside her chest. For the next several days, awkward distance replaced familiar warmth. Sensed withdrawing but misunderstood the reason. She believed he had grown ashamed of their friendship. He believed she wished to avoid rumors. Their silence became another weapon Lady Beatrice gladly welcomed. Finally, she pressed to dismiss the cook altogether. "If you truly care for the girl," she insisted, "send her away before society humiliates her." The suggestion felt unbearable. That evening wandered alone through the rain-soaked gardens until darkness swallowed every path. He argued with himself for hours. Keeping near meant exposing her to relentless whispers. Sending her away meant breaking his own heart. Trapped between love and duty, he chose the sacrifice he believed would protect her future. The next afternoon, every servant noticed unusual tension inside the entrance hall. Arrived after receiving the Duke's summons, she stood quietly before him, her hands folded, her eyes searching his face for reassurance. Could scarcely breathe. A leather pouch containing 2 years of generous wages rested upon the polished table between them. His fingers trembled as he pushed it toward her. "Take your wages and leave my castle now." The words echoed through the vast hall like a door slamming shut. His face lost its color. She looked into his eyes, hoping to discover warmth hidden behind the command, but all she found was unbearable sorrow he struggled to conceal. Without protest, she accepted the pouch, removed the apron she had proudly worn for 2 years, and whispered, "Thank you for every kindness, Your Grace." Then she turned and walked through the castle doors into the falling rain, leaving staring after the only person who had ever made truly feel like home. Dawn arrived wrapped in pale mist, but no sunrise could brighten Castle after's departure. The servants whispered softly as they moved through their duties, sensing that something precious had vanished with the young cook. Breakfast was prepared by another pair of hands, yet every loaf seemed dry, every cup of tea tasted ordinary, and every room carried a silence that no fire could warm. Stood before the untouched meal, then quietly pushed the plate away. For the first time in years, the castle no longer felt like his home. Sleep had abandoned him completely. Throughout the long night he replayed its final expression, remembering how she had thanked him instead of accusing him. Her grace only deepened his guilt. He wondered whether she had found shelter from the rain or whether she was walking lonely roads with nothing except a small suitcase and a broken heart. Every memory became another weight upon his conscience. Unable to endure the emptiness, wandered the corridors before sunrise. As he approached the drawing room, he heard familiar voices behind the partially opened door. Lady Beatrice was speaking with her personal maid, sounding unusually pleased. The foolish girl never questioned a word, Lady Beatrice laughed quietly. She believed the Duke wished to be rid of her. The maid hesitated, and His Grace. He believed society demanded it. Men become wonderfully obedient when reminded of family honor. Froze. Lady Beatrice continued, without realizing he stood outside. Had they remained together much longer, he would certainly have offered marriage. Imagine a servant becoming Duchess of, "I simply protected this family from disgrace." Every sentence struck like a hammer. The cruel dismissal had never been necessary. The shame, the tears, the unbearable farewell had all been built upon deliberate lies. His hands clenched until his knuckles whitened. For one terrible moment, anger threatened to overwhelm him, but sorrow arrived first. He had wounded the woman he loved with his own voice. Without entering the room, turned sharply and hurried toward the stables. "Prepare my horse immediately," he ordered. Within minutes, he rode through the castle gates, ignoring the cold morning wind. He searched every lane leading toward the neighboring village, asking merchants, farmers, and travelers whether they had seen a young woman carrying a worn suitcase. Most simply pointed farther down the road, saying she had continued walking before sunrise with remarkable determination despite the rain. Several hours later reached a modest stone cottage covered in climbing ivy. Smoke curled gently from its chimney. An elderly widow welcomed him with cautious curiosity before quietly stepping aside. Inside, stood beside a small wooden table preparing fresh vegetable soup. She looked tired, yet kindness still softened her face. When she saw, surprise briefly crossed her eyes before calm returned. Neither spoke immediately. The silence carried every emotion words had failed to express. Finally, removed his gloves and bowed his head. I have wronged you beyond forgiveness. Remain still. I believed I was protecting you, he continued. Instead, I allowed fear to speak where love should have spoken. My stepmother deceived us both, but the command came from my own lips. I cannot excuse that. His voice trembled with honest regret. I have come to ask something I scarcely deserve. Lowered the wooden spoon she held. What is it, Your Grace? Please come home. She looked toward the cottage window, where gentle morning light rested upon the garden. A castle is not a home simply because it has walls, she answered softly. A home is where trust lives. Her quiet words pierced him more deeply than anger ever could. Nodded. You are right. He did not attempt another excuse or another plea. Instead, he accepted responsibility. I cannot ask you to forget yesterday. I can only promise that every day afterward will be spent earning your forgiveness. Studied his face carefully. For the first time she saw not an untouchable duke, but a lonely man stripped of pride. She believed his sorrow. Yet pain still lingered within her heart. I cared for you more than I ever admitted, she confessed. When you dismissed me, I believed every shared conversation had meant nothing. They meant everything, whispered. A faint tear escaped before he could hide it. The elderly widow quietly left the room, giving them privacy. Stepped closer. If trust is to return, it cannot be rebuilt through beautiful speeches. Met her eyes. It will be rebuilt through truth. She offered the smallest hopeful smile. Then let truth begin today. For the first time since the painful farewell, hope replaced despair. Standing inside the humble cottage rather than the grandeur of castle, realized love had never depended upon titles, wealth, or ancient stone walls. It depended upon courage, honesty, and the willingness to mend what pride had broken. As morning sunlight finally broke through the clouds, he silently vowed that he would never again allow another voice to stand between his heart and the woman who had always been its truest home.